For my in-school literacy project, I worked with students in a variety of activities in the classroom, including daily 5 stations, a Time for Kids activity, and a read aloud. This project exposed me to so many different types of activities and teaching methods, and it proved to be an extensive learning experience for me. For the first part of my in-school literacy project, I worked, along with my partner, with students in 3 of the class daily 5 stations. The first station that Jamie and I helped with was a crossword activity station. When we first started helping at this station, I had to ask one of the students what they were supposed to be doing because I had no idea. The student explained it to me and happily showed me his worksheet. They were supposed to be using their spelling words to create their own crossword puzzles on worksheets that already had boxes drawn on them. This activity was easy for me to grasp since I had created crossword puzzles before, but some of the students were confused because they didn't even know what exactly crossword puzzles were. By the time all of the students understood what they were supposed to be doing, some of them had already finished making their puzzles. It was obvious that some of them were more literate in the world of crossword puzzle making, probably because they had seen them before and had actually solved some outside of school, while others didn't even know what they were. For the writing station, I talked to some of the kids about what they were writing and gave others ideas. Some of them were writing stories about their pets and trips they had been on, while others were writing letters to the teacher and teaching assistant. For the computer station, I watched what the students were doing, talked to them about the various reading and gaming options they had on their computers, and helped some of the students who couldn't access the websites on their own. When kids needed help finding or logging onto a website, I had to ask other students for help because I had never been on the websites that they were accessing. The computer station required knowledge of where to go in order to find the correct websites, and it required students to remember usernames and passwords that they had been previously given, which was easy for some students and more difficult for others. For another part of our in-school literacy project, Jamie and I did a Time for Kids activity with the class. This activity involved reading paragraphs about the explorer Johan Nilsson, looking at pictures and maps of his journey, and then completing a matching activity about various explorers. We first passed out the papers and introduced the activity, and then we engaged the students by choosing individuals to read the different paragraphs and captions in the pamphlet. After reading through the pamphlet and discussing the reading and pictures with the class, we started on the matching activity, which involved matching pictures to captions about explorers and their journeys. Some of the pictures were easy to match with the captions because of context clues, but a few of them were difficult, and Jamie and I had to look up the answers online. The kids enjoyed the activity, but to complete it, you really had to have previous knowledge of some of the historical expeditions. The last thing that my partner and I did for our in-school literacy project was a read aloud for the book Aunt Chip and the Great Triple Creek Dam Affair by Patricia Polacco. This book is about a town that is facing consequences after putting a teepee tower over the library 50 years prior. The townspeople forgot how to read, and the children were never taught because everyone, except Aunt Chip, got too obsessed with their TVs and stopped reading. This book was fairly long for a read aloud, so Jamie and I each read half of it to the class. We asked the class questions throughout the book, but this was really new to me because I had never done an interactive read aloud in front of a class before. The kids loved answering our questions, though, and this was really encouraging since I was a little nervous. My partner and I observed and somewhat participated in the daily 5 stations, but then actively participated in the Time for Kids activity and the whole class read aloud. I was not familiar with the daily 5 stations until seeing them in our second grade classroom, so this was completely new to me, and the kids did a great job of explaining the various stations to me. For the Time for Kids activity and the read aloud, being literate meant being able to understand what was read and being able to participate by answering questions and discussing parts from the pamphlet and the book that were read. The daily 5 stations involved a wide variety of different texts from books to puzzles to websites and games, while the text for the Time for Kids activity was the activity pamphlet and the text for the read aloud was the book Aunt Chip and the Great Triple Creek Dam Affair. For my out-of-school literacy practices project, I focused on gaming, and more specifically, Call of Duty Black Ops 2. For the first part of my out-of-school literacy project, I watched my friends play games and tried to learn more about the various gaming communities. I asked lots of questions and listened to my friends talk to other people on their headsets. I realized that I quickly became confused the first few times I heard them talk to people through gaming chat programs, but after being exposed more and asking questions about what things meant, I was able to understand them a little better. It wasn't quite like being thrown into a room with people who only speak Russian or Italian, but I still had no idea what was being talked about because of all the seemingly strange dialogue. I didn't know any of the background context needed to understand the acronyms in game language, like character types and names, weapon names, and names for different actions. In the gaming community, literacy means being able to understand this lingo and also being able to confidently participate in discussions about specific games and gaming in general. If you don't know what a first-person shooter or WoW, which is World of Warcraft, refers to, then you probably wouldn't consider yourself literate in those specific gaming communities. To learn more about the gaming community, I not only talked to my friends, but I also did research online, watched YouTube videos, and looked through gaming magazines like Game Informer. These resources exposed me to just how elaborate the world of gaming is, with so many different game systems and genres. Every game has its own specific key vocabulary, while gaming in general and different genres of games also have their own more broad vocabularies. I found that a person can be literate in a specific gaming community even if they know nothing about other games, since each game has its own key vocabulary. After becoming more familiar with the gaming community, I actively participated in the community by going with a few of my friends to the midnight release of a new and widely popular game, Call of Duty Black Ops 2. This game is a first-person shooter that has a campaign mode, various multiplayer options, and a zombies mode, which involves fighting against zombies rather than people. When my friends received their copies of the game, they were also each given a poster and a patch with the game title written on them. These items would mean nothing to people who were not familiar with the game, but my friends were very excited to get them since these items showed that they were literate and active members of the Call of Duty Black Ops 2 community. Once I somewhat understood how the game worked, I actively participated by jumping right in, or attempting to jump right in, and play Black Ops 2. My friends told me some of the things I needed to know, like how to hold the controller and what buttons to press in order to move and shoot, and I had to figure out the rest on my own. First few attempts involved lots of screaming, my character dying over and over, and lots of failed attempts at killing zombies. I soon figured out how to make my character jump and use a knife, but it took lots of practice before I was able to comfortably get through several waves or levels because I had never even held an Xbox controller before. Being literate in the Call of Duty Black Ops 2 community involves more than I would have ever previously thought before attempting to play the game and communicate with people who are fluent in the Black Ops game language. I truly found out what it takes to be literate in the Black Ops community since I immersed myself before knowing anything about the game. I had to learn names of guns and character classes, I had to become familiar with an Xbox controller and figure out how to make my character move the way I wanted it to, and I had to become familiar with other things like the various maps in the game. I still did not feel proficient in the Black Ops game language, but I found that I got better each time I played and that becoming literate in anything takes a lot of time and effort. My friends and I also played DDR, or Dance Dance Revolution, which is a completely different type of game. I had played DDR a few times back in high school, so I luckily already knew how it worked and everything. I was pretty terrible when I got back on the map for the first time in over 3 years, but it was nothing like holding an Xbox controller for the first time. Being literate in this game requires completely different knowledge and abilities than Call of Duty Black Ops 2. While my in-school and out-of-school literacy practices projects focused on completely different topics in completely different settings, I came to find out that they were quite similar in some senses. Both projects required me to step out of my comfort zone and do things that I had never done before, and both required me to become proficient in certain types of language that I was not previously familiar with. Classroom activities like Daily 5 Stations and Read-Alouds and Call of Duty Black Ops 2 each have their own text and specific key vocabularies, and each require specific types of knowledge in order to become literate in them.